In an address to Congress, President Nixon once said, "No qualified student who wants to go to college should be barred by the lack of money. That has long been a great American goal. I propose that we achieve it now." Nixon is basically saying that a student who is willing to put in the effort and work should not be denied post-secondary education just because they can't make the money. It's no wonder why college students want there to be so much taken off of the tuition. Whether that's through the increase of grants or scholarships or just the overall idea of implementing free college, it helps them achieve their dreams.
I got some grants that I applied for, but even then it was minimal. It was helpful, it was quite helpful, but it didn't offset any of the debt that I accumulated.
So me being a first generation college student, it's always, it pushes always to pursue the college degree. So I would say that pursuing a college degree is like a very good foundation in order to start a good paying job career.
In that extent, yes, I would say so, because when you're going into college, your first year or second year, your first 2 years are generally going over your general education, meaning the math, the calculus, the English, just basically knocking out those courses. That way, when you're a junior in junior college, you can start on your upper divisional courses, right? The courses that you really need in order to graduate. So I would say, in that sense, certain classes I can understand that, okay, these are upper divisional college courses in which you can only get in a certain area. However, certain classes I believe should be accommodable to be free.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I feel like having school just be free in general. I mean, if you look at the amount of money that we have to pay just for books, I remember being in high school, you would just get books for free, return it. But here, even if you were to just rent a book, it'd be a minimum of $50. If you wanted to get just a textbook for chemistry, that's already almost $200, And it's just
Yes.
If schooling was free, we wouldn't have to worry about that. We already have rent to worry about. For people who commute especially, they already have gas to worry about. We already have so many outside purchases and outside things that we'd have to worry about financially, gas and rent and food and just our own well-being, because we're kind of on our own here. That having that extra, price of school as well on top of that is just such a burden to carry.
So with that in mind, what is your perspective on free college?
Free? Oh, it should absolutely be universal, just like universal health care, I believe in. Universal education. If they want people to be able to enter the workforce in a productive way, they shouldn't make it so difficult for us to get there, which is unfortunate that college, especially in California, especially in the United States, is as expensive as it is. Because I know there are countries that do implement free college, and I feel like that's helpful for all parties involved.
And just to be sure, you felt that block of that in order to reach higher education, you had to pull up money and get in debt.
Yes, because that's the only way you could pursue a college degree is taking some student loans.
No, he's actually correct. Students have no choice but to pull out loans just to achieve a secondary education or just to get a better paying job. In fact, there are some individuals who are lucky enough to have their parents pay for part of their tuition.
Yeah. Right now I'm currently living with my parents, so yeah, the loans would affect my parents and myself.
Yeah, so at least for me, there is a loan that my parents did offer to pay for. But they said for that loan, they would go ahead and help me pay for it. So yeah, that's a benefit for me, I guess, is I get help a little bit from them financially,
Yeah, so same way, my parents did talk. We did talk, and they are able to help me with with loans. And overall, it's not only pay for the schooling that we have now, right, but further on, because we know that medical school can be a financial burden and other steps towards that. So loans are going to have to, unfortunately be taken out. But I mean, yeah, I'm blessed to say that, they are able to help me out in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, definitely.
But obviously not everybody's like that. In fact, I think I know a man who's able to explain this a lot better than I can. You should probably go visit him.
Well, I'm Karina Salvador, and
I'm Greg Shive. Nice to meet you all.
he is the AVID coordinator
Right.
at North, or
Right.
for AVID.
We're at North, yes.
So the first question I have for you is, do you have any kids that are attending or have attended college?
Yes, two.
2 kids.
One just graduated this week, and my other is a first year freshman.
Okay, so you're a parent of a student in college. So were you affected by having your children pay for tuition?
I assume financially affected, that's what you mean?
Yeah.
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's expensive. So we've had to, make some sacrifices here or there. We've had to take on some responsibilities for that. And, anything that you pay for has a cost, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been interesting for sure. But worth it, I think.
What's your personal experience? Is it like paying for it? Like, is it hard? Is it difficult?
That's interesting. We took out some loans for their education, and then we paid some just out of our regular budget, although that hasn't been a thing as much. The tuition and all of that only happens a couple times a year. Most of the costs come about with incidental costs. So making sure every month that they have some money for things that they need throughout the month, that they're things that they would have to buy, things they have to shop for, that any of us would shop for in any given month. Just making sure all that's handled every month so they can survive where they are.
Do you think that there are positives and negatives to tuition for colleges? And what are your positives?
Oh gosh. Well, yeah, I mean, positive would be that students don't have the level of debt, families don't have the stress that they once did with costs. The financial positives are pretty clear, right? At least at the point of purchase from the families. The negatives I can see as well, however. I think that anything that you make where there's no cost to the individual, someone's paying for that, right? Definitely. Someone has to pay those salaries, someone has to pay those costs, and if it's not from the person who's actually buying the product, then it's probably going to be some level of government. And I don't know, that's a huge cost for all of us, even as taxpayers, right? So there's a cost there for sure. I think that most of the students whose family has a need, they get covered. They get covered for the most part. Things like the Promise Program or through Pell Grants or Cal Grants. And the tuition is handled. Where it gets expensive, is living on campus. That's not handled so much. But that's a choice that people have to make, whether or not they want to pay for that.
Okay, everyone, thank you for watching. Karina and Greg, out!
Now, even though these students want free college, the implication of it actually being there is not a reality. But there are things implemented into the system to where students are able to, repay their debt or anything like that. For example, there's a thing called the Student Forgiveness Loan. And what it basically does is that after working in a certain field for 10 plus years, such as like firefighting, teacher, or anything that provides services to society, a certain amount will be taken off depending on where you work or the company that you work for. Teachers, it depends on what school you work at. If it's a low income school, a certain amount will be paid off of your debt. This is probably one of the most positive things, that it does get rid of those huge debts, but it still requires you to be in debt, which is a problem still. So with all these factors in mind, obviously this is a problem. So what's being done about it today? President Biden addressed this problem back in 2021 by saying that anybody who makes $125,000 or less income should have free college tuition. So during this time the pandemic was happening and the prioritizing of COVID and COVID safety was at an all-time high. So the idea of implementing free college was kind of pushed to the side on a waiting list and something like that. But when it resurfaced, the idea of raising the Pell Grant came about. And now that still didn't solve the problem of there still being debt. It comes around full circle again because it doesn't cover the whole cost of a tuition, and that still makes people suffer. There's a positive and negative side to Biden's idea. Some argue that it would increase the overall wellness of the economy for America, and at the same time, the other side saying the implication of it is not really an ideal thing or it's not realistic. Now, the only reason why Biden's plan didn't go through is because there was concern for the government being too involved with the schools. Now, if they weren't too involved with the schools, they might be less for the students and more towards their political agenda. That was the concern during that time. So you may be asking, who are those people who are against and with free college? And before I answer that, we should probably analyze some data that answers that pretty well, actually. So let's go in the library. Now, the information and data that I mentioned is on a website called Pew Research Center. And the great thing about this website is that its creator is actually nonpartisan. Now, his expertise are actually in demographics, social trends, and the U.S. politics and policies. Basically, this guy knows what he's talking about. Now, this website is actually the least biased out of all of the ones that I looked at. They get their data and information from conducting public opinion polls, demographic research, social science research, and other data-driven research. Because of where they get their information, data, and what their goals are, I trusted this website in order to use for information. Now, looking at the demographic, 36% opposed free college and 63% were in favor of it. Now, between men and women, 42% of men opposed it, while 58% were in favor of it. For women, 31% were against it, and 68% were with it. When it comes to the backgrounds of people, most Black, Hispanic, and Asians are in favor of it, while the white community is actually split. Well, almost split. There are more in favor of it than against it. Now, when it comes to age, the younger they are, the more in favor they seem to be. Now, the older they are, they seem to be more against it, but not all the way, as you can see. When it comes to level of education, it seems that the high school or less degrees are in favor of it. Now, when it comes to Republican and Democrats, it seems that more Republicans are against it, and the Democrats are more in favor of it. And obviously, there are minor things under those categories. As you can see right here, families who make less or equal to 30K are actually in favor of it more than families who make 80K, 30K, or 70. Like, the range is quite, the gap is right there. It's actually quite interesting because it really shows the people who are more in, not poverty, but, you know, who make less of an income are actually more in favor of free college tuition because of how costly it is. When you sit down and actually look at the data, it starts to make sense why people lean towards one way or the other. For example, Republicans who have completed college mostly oppose making tuition free for all American students. The proposal draws more support from Republicans who do not have a 4-year degree. Now, this is quite interesting because the ones who did complete it don't want college tuition to be free. Perhaps maybe because they already had paid, so just to make it free right after they had to pay that so much money probably wouldn't seem fair to them, therefore that's why they are opposed of it. But those who have not completed it are in favor of it, so they don't have to pay so much. It's quite interesting to see how people come up with these decisions. Now, that is the overall demographic about different people's opinions on free college tuition. But let's rewind back to when I said that people were a little bit too concerned about having free college and having the government put their hand in it. The concern was that if the government has their hand in it, that means that a lot of the things will change about, you know, having a private institute and making it become public and having the government change the ideals and the way college works. Now, we really can't say anything about that unless we compare it to other countries that have already implemented it, such as Russia. Is Russia's government or any other country that has free college, are those governments putting their hand too much in it and overruling anything that the private institutions are doing? Now, even though we got the different demographics of, you know, people who support or who do not support tuition, it really doesn't answer the fact that is it worth implementing? I know there's different sides to it and there's different perspectives on it, but what if we actually take a step back and look at other countries who have actually implemented this into their system? Well, to an extent. There's no particular reason why I chose Russia. It's mostly because of how interesting the system is and how well it actually works. On average, 75% of Russia's 25 to 64-year-olds have attained at least an upper secondary qualification, basically meaning they have college completed, and are expecting the young to be at an average of 84%, so an increase in how many people actually have a college degree. Their unemployment rates are actually declining. Their unemployment rates are declining due to them actually being able to manage people going to college and making it accessible in order for them to achieve these goals and degrees. So they're able to work in fields that they always wanted to or that they can provide work to. The key word here is accessibility. The Russian government implementing free college into the system allows people to reach their dreams, something that here in the US it's hard to do and people wish they can do. Now, a lot of the demographics that we looked at earlier shows that people are against it. Now, these people are against it because there's a bunch of different ideals against it, such as we would have to increase taxes, we would have to do this, we would have to do that. And for those, there are certain answers that can be compromised. Even though we're split on the decision of making college free, We all want the better for our country and to make it a better place and allow people to accomplish their dreams.